Hello, this is Dr. Wendy Rowley, and this is Heartfield Series, episode 17. And I think a good topic today would be surrender. And some of the literature that you can read of other adepts or people with really good connection to spirit, such as Rudolf Steiner, have some really interesting things in them. Edgar Cayce, Rudolf Steiner, Lee Carroll O'Crion. There are many, many great channels even here now that are bringing in very wonderful and juicy information that get us to think outside the box a little bit. And Rudolf Steiner says some really interesting things, and I've looked at this in meditation, and it's a fascinating thing to look at. And meditation, for the idea of getting information and healing and communing with the Creator, are very interesting concepts to meditation because mainly they teach stress reduction meditation or quieting the mind in America. But you have many other aspects to meditation. So Steiner talks about intellect, and that the time of intellect peaked at the time of Aristotle, of the Greek civilization, a long time ago. I don't know my dates, but a long time ago. And in the healing paradigm, I've mentioned this in some of the episodes of different tapes, because I have some on my website. But when you do clearing and you learn to look at the spiritual anatomy, you have a little box in here below the pituitary gland called reason. And you have a little box up in the third layer of your aura, which is the mental field up here, called intellect. And you have a little box at the back of the brainstem area called the analyzer. And for men, it's the spirit and the body. You can think of it having 2 layers and 7 little slots for the 7 chakras. And you learn to clear those out and see the colors in there, or the words or the thoughts that are repetitive. And you learn to put roses outside of your aura, and the thoughts go out, or the color or whatever it is, and you blow them up, and you do that till it quiets down. You move pictures out, as you do also in the filters of the chakras. And it's a really, really wonderful healing exercise because it creates quiet mind. It gets rid of a lot of repetitive thoughts. And if you continue to do that as a practice in your self-healing meditation practice, you can get a very calm mind, a very non-chatty, noisy mind. And for a woman, there's a third layer in that little box or cube that you imagine, and that has to do with the creative female energy. So we do have an extra energy field to heal. And so in each of those, reason, intellect, and analyzer, you, as women, we have to go in and clear out that third layer. So maybe you spend part of a meditation session just doing your creative female clearing, or and then you work the other 2. We have quite a bit more work, as people often say. And so the interesting thing about the analyzer, and both the reason and the intellect over time, you'll see have connections that go there. The analyzer has connections down along the back into the chakras 1, 2, and 3. Now, Edgar Cayce says something interesting. You meditate, you tune to the divine, and you bring in the light of the soul. And he said, and then the hard work begins. And so that light of the soul comes down, and the lower 3 chakras are sort of like us slipping down into density, into the more gritty, materialistic part of life. And it's part of evolution on a planetary system. And so you end up having many, many lifetimes through eons of time, and you've got family, and even this life and your timeline, and you accumulate stuff, and then you begin clearing that out. In my personal journey, I'd started meditating in my mid-20s, and by my mid-30s, and I'd consistently done it. I was so filled with pain that I'd walk in a room and all I would feel was pain. And so I use these simple techniques that I often teach in my lectures or in my healing meditations or in my group work. I used to do it as a class, but I don't do that anymore. I just sort of give the basics. And it's a heady journey. It gets real intense at times. If you go on that Akashic clearing journey, that balancing of the light quotient of light and dark. But so you get so that your it becomes a practice, and you do that maybe half an hour in the morning and night, and eventually over time you clear. And every time you go into a new space, you don't quite see, you don't quite feel. There's a lot of congestion and noise and stuff that comes in, and you keep sort of dabbling at it. And eventually that space will clear and reveal itself to you, and you start seeing different parts of the spiritual energy anatomy. And it's never the same. Every time you go in there, it's something different. And you have to be patient. You have to be joyful and neutral. And that's why you operate in the sixth chakra in the center of your head, because that's a place of neutrality. So you must be certain of your spiritual abilities to do that. I can heal. You must be neutral up here, where you're not in judgment or feeling good or bad. And you must be joyful, because the creator creates with joy. So you can learn to use roses or boxes and pull energy out. And it's basically learning to heal with light, color, and eventually sound, and words and pictures. So you just put all those things in and you blow up these roses, and your soul brings in another energy, a new replacement for what you took out. Some people say, well, that was a lie, that was calcified, crystallized energy, stock picture, an event from childhood. There's many ways to look at it. Some people say it's a pain picture or a perfect picture. I learned more about through my spiritual anatomy about psychology than I did in any course I ever took. Anyway, so I found these tools and I began working, and I eventually got rid of all that pain. And I found my way back to joy, like you have when you're a child. And children are naturally in joy because they haven't brought in all those layers. So I started talking about intellect, reason, and analyzer. And so the funny thing about life now is sort of getting out of your head and not having the knowing all the time, and learning to surrender. And I have to do that every time I do these series of the Heart Field series, because I never know what's going to be said. Sometimes it creates a little anxiety in me. And sometimes you go into that space to look at something in meditation for healing, and it creates a little anxiety. So sometimes looking and studying that spiritual anatomy that you have in the spirit body is a fascinating adventure. And you realize much of what you hear people say in words and phrases actually has a true correspondence in the energy field. Like people are like, well, don't be in your head. Well, yeah, because you have this little box, and you're stuck in thinking. But behind here is all this intuition, and your heart is all this intuition. So you develop, and it's a good thing to develop a way of tuning into that intuition, that high intuition of the heart. And I'll end with this and let Eliane begin her talk, so this is not too long. But one of the other things that's very interesting is Steiner had said that the intellect was going to shift into a new paradigm and would become part of intuition. And I began to notice something farther up back in here. And I realized it's that developing new part of the spiritual anatomy that's going to be eventually connected to intellect, that's related to the intuitive heart. So we're going to develop some new aspect of this thinking process, or the intellect, or something is going to shift. And over the next hundreds of years, we will develop some new aspect within our spiritual anatomy that gives us a higher function as we evolve. You might not see it in the physical form of people, but in the spiritual body, in this interim spirit body, is where all this change happens. And you can see sometimes the direction that we're headed in. So Rudolf Steiner mentioned it, and back in the 1800s, early 1900s, he saw it, and I eventually saw it. And we're in this time where all this other new and exciting things are happening to humans in the way of evolution. So I'm looking forward to, and Aliane is sharing information about the outer torus and our soul connections out to there, and their connections out into the field. So it's an exciting time to look at this stuff if you're into this kind of thing, which I clearly am. Okay, I'm going to turn the floor over to her, and let's see what she has to say about the Heart Field series in this episode. She gave us a little synopsis at the last session, and we'll see what we got today. Oh, good day to you, dearest beings of light. I am Alienia of Cosmic Service, Pleiadian Mother of Sound. Peace be with you, and peace be with you. So this one, when she wants to talk about a subject, sometimes can get a little nervous and talk very fast, but we think she did a very good job of explaining intellect, reason, and analyzer, and intuition, and surrender. What we would like to add is part of surrender is accepting the faith that you do not know everything, but you have, as we talked about in the last episode, you have the faith to expect that everything will work out in benevolence, which is why we say to you, expect benevolence in all you do. And sometimes we say all you do, think, feel, or say, or we'll say a different phrase to remind you to always expect benevolence and that things work out for the greater good of all. So that's what we would only add about what she said. And so what we'd like to talk about today is that in the heart field and the connection out to the field and in the connection with the angelic realm. And we were talking about the connections in the heart in relation to creation and sound. And we have mentioned to this one recently in the interdimensional DNA alignments that there is another energy out in the field that is different than the bliss that one feels of one's soul when one does healing work in the body. And that there's a very high level of a bliss there that is the merge of the supreme being's creational energy, as she said, the creator creates with joy, and the soul group energy. And so that a soul group can bring in a group feeling into the energy of the group that is working. A feeling of something transcendent and profound, something that comes over a group that says, I don't know what this is, but this touches my heart deeply. And I know that this is a little familiar because the soul is familiar to you. You have your soul with you always as you come into incarnations. And it is also something where you go, I have touched something very high, very pure, and very part of who I truly am. So in this field that everyone experiences, there is this ability to bring in a very high level of a blissful joy. And this is going to increase. This is one of the changes going on now that is coming in. Now, this one was contemplating her notes of interdimensional DNA the other day, and she remembers we said that the interdimensional DNA strands, if you have 12 of them, that are most getting upgraded at this time were 4, 8, and 11. And she was reading Lee Carroll's work on his work on interdimensional DNA, iDNA, and he mentioned that 11 was the one most getting upgraded at this time of this evolutionary stage on the planet that you were on, the middle. You came in, you worked the puzzle, you've worked the picture as a group evolving the earth, and now you're at the middle. And now you go into further and further enlightenment. You could say in some ways that the dark ages are behind you of your whole system of development of the millions of years of humans on the planet. That's an exciting thing. So it is this strand 11 of your interdimensional DNA that carries this bliss. She also was reviewing her notes that she's pulled out of her Akashic records, that strand 11 has to do with cosmic energy, and that your body, as she sometimes says in her lectures, has earth energy and cosmic energy in the spirit body that you work with in healing, and you heal the different aspects out of them, both earth and cosmic energy and earth and cosmic mix. Well, out in the field, it is the cosmic energy that brings in this high, high bliss of the creator. So what does that mean? How does that get to the planet? Why is that in the envelope of the planet, out in between what we call the ring, the band between the earth band and the galactic band? You can think of two rings and a space between. And how does that bliss get into the band between the Earth and the galactic bands? And on the other side of the galactic band is starry space. It's because the cosmic energy coming from the enlightened planets ahead of you have like a wormhole open that fills that. So you are actually being fed in an intergalactic cosmic way by all the enlightened planets who came before you. Just as you create a soul group energy of gold that you do healing work, or you uplay gold if you do the healing of the grids that we've talked about in these series. Humans come together as a group of souls and say, let's scrub that crystalline grid clean, get rid of some of those dark miscreations that we made in earlier lifetimes, and allow the gold of the past renaissance to come in and fill that. And we create a gold that gets stored up in the angelic realm that they use to create another arc over to another time when that gold is needed. So these other planetary systems that became enlightened stored up a high level of gold in the outer band of their planetary systems that get fed and passed on planet to planet to planet. And they feed you at this time in the middle. They come in and they feed you in a very strong way. So therefore, your interdimensional DNA strand 11 gets an upgrade so that you may feel more of this connection. Who knew? That's such an amazing thought. But they are sharing their planetary gold with you to uplift you at this time. So not only are you uplifted through the angelic kingdoms that created the form of the human body and the 24 chromosome system of interdimensional DNA, but you are being uplifted by these spiritual beings on other planets who created gold and became enlightened and are passing it on. And they pass it on when they move their grids of their informations into a new planetary system. So it is reverberating in what is called the interim grid below your Master Christ grid. And there it is, vibrating in that interim grid. So there's many gifts there. It's the source of time capsule work. You can read about that on the web. It's the source of this gold that you can feel in soul group energy that can come down. And there are many things that we will share in these next series of lectures about what else is in that interim grid, besides the time capsules and the gold of the soul group feelings that can come in when you do grid healing as a group of souls. That's what we wish to share with you this day. You might have to listen to this a few times for it to sink in. It's okay. It's a pretty big thought. Peace be with you. You are dearly loved. Expect benevolence in all you do, and we bid you adieu. All right. I'm going to say that was a pretty fascinating bit of information. I thank Aliania for her work and her service and for bringing in these uplifting thoughts that we have in this time. Also, there's the Human Potential series starting or on YouTube at this time. And that's going to be another bunch of uplifting bit of information for us to feel more hopeful regarding the times we're in right now. I hope you tune into that, and I hope you like, subscribe, and comment. And feel free to share this website with people you know who might be into it. And let's get the word out there, because we'd like to get together a nice sized group of people to start healing the human crystalline or the human consciousness grid of the earth, so that when you walk on the earth, all that memory of war has been lifted. It can happen. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.